Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a Music of the Mat remix on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. I'm your host, Andrew Rich, joined today by a first-time guest. He is the contributor at Voices of Wrestling and one of the hosts of the Open the Voicegate podcast. It's Case Lowe. Hello, Case.
Andrew Rich, I'm so happy to finally be here. I feel like on VoiceGate for a while, there was a bit of an ongoing bit in which I would complain about how I've never been invited on this show, even though that wasn't true. And I had been invited multiple times and just hadn't been able to fit into your recording window. But I am very glad that you reached out to me when you did, and I am very glad that we are here recording this episode.
Good to have you. Good to have you finally. Yeah, this is, I believe, not just the first time you've been on here. I think this is the first time we've ever podcasted together. Now, we've met in person a bunch of times because of the various Chicago wrestling trips that I've been on. But this is our first time doing audio together, I think. And
that sounds right.
Yeah, I've had your co-host Mike Spears on a bunch of times before. So, yeah, this is a long time coming for sure.
I'm very excited to be here. Always lovely to see you in person. Always a delight to be around. And I look forward to this exciting podcast venture between us. As the day went on, I was already looking forward to the show just based off the invite, but as today has gone on, I've been more and more excited to talk about the stuff that we're going to talk about, so this is nice.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wanted to bring this up quickly first. I know that you used to have your own music podcast called Art School Albums, where you and a guest would talk about various hip and cool albums. And look, if you ever bring it back one day and need someone to talk about Songs from the Big Chair by Tears for Fears or Demon Days by Gorillaz, you know where to find me, my man.
That's good to know. I associate you, am I wrong in that you're like a really big Killers fan, aren't you?
Oh, I love the Killers, yeah.
Okay, I don't know why I associate you with that band, but I do. That's funny that you bring that podcast up. That was something that I did in college as just a way to just talk into microphones more than I was already doing. And I feel like that show, I mean, it did not have a very large listening audience by any means, but that show very specifically made a mark with people within the wrestling community that I know, which was not necessarily the intention, but I know that the nurse, aka Rich's wife, aka Michelle, was such an ardent supporter and listener of that podcast, and whenever I see her, she always brings it up and always wants me to bring it back, which I find to be very, very funny. And I get that just every so often of somebody that I barely know through wrestling going like, hey, I really like that music podcast, you should do that again. It's like, all right, well, maybe down the road. So Andrew, that is noted. If we ever decide to bring that podcast back, I will be sure to have you on it.
At least someone's listening. That is at least some good news there. Yeah, but anyway, this episode is a bit of timely business. It's an episode I'm calling Mania Weekend, and it's actually going to come out the week of WrestleMania Weekend, where wrestling companies descend upon the city where Mania is being held and run their own shows to capitalize on all of the fans that are there. It's been happening for, I think, about 2 decades at this point, maybe longer, and to say that it's grown would be quite the understatement, both in terms of the amount of companies that run the shows, because now it seems like almost every company under the sun runs there, and also just in terms of how many days it goes, because we call it Mania Weekend, but the weekend seems to start earlier and earlier each year. I mean, looking at the schedule on Voices of Wrestling, there's a show happening on Monday, April 13th, which is the day before this episode comes out, and 5 days before the first night of Mania. I mean, it's insane. But that's what Mania Weekend has become. Very much a quantity over quality sort of thing. Now, Case, I know you went to Mania Weekend last year in Vegas. How many weekends of those have you gone to, and what's your experience been like at them?
I only went last year, logistically, just given sort of my age and where I was at in life, I was never able to make what I feel like were one of the prime Mania weekends, which would have been anywhere in that maybe 2011 to 2016 range, when it was a weekend that was carried by Ring of Honor and by whatever Gabe Sapolsky was doing, whether it was Dragon Gate USA or Evolve or the WWE Super shows that used to happen. But I went last year because the Dragon Gate guys were in town, and I wanted to spend a few days just following them around. And so myself and Mike Spears were out there, and the aforementioned Rich Craich was out there. And I'm somebody who, because of my job, I don't travel often because I'm working a lot. But that was sort of a big deal for me. It was the first trip I've really taken as an adult. I was freshly 26 when that happened last year. And so it was kind of the first time that I had just been out somewhere largely by myself, and it was a very rewarding experience for me on a personal level in that way. But in terms of the wrestling, it was great because whatever the Dragon Gate guys were doing, I was at that show. I think the only Dragon Gate stuff that I missed in person was there was a Progress show maybe Thursday morning that I skipped out on, but otherwise, I was at the Defy show, and I was at the Prestige show, and I was at the Dragon Gate proper shows, and there was a Texas Wrestling Cartel show where the entire crowd was there to watch Izzy of the former Bayley superfan at NXT fame. That whole crowd was there for her, and then me, Mike Spears, and Gabe Sapolsky were there because there happened to be some Dragon Gate guys on that show as well, and that was a really unique experience. So the timing of it didn't work out this year for me to make my way back because of things related to work, which is a bummer. I would like to be out there and be with the Dragon Gate crew again. Did not work out, but I'm very glad that I got to sort of cross that off the list. And even if it's not the Mania weekend that I grew up with, which was normally Gabe's promotions blowing off big feuds, Ring of Honor doing some of their biggest matches of the year, you're right, it is sort of a quantity over quality weekend now, but I'm still glad that I got to experience it to some degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've also only been to one Mania weekend. It was the one in New York in 2019. It was when I famously missed the first show I was going to, the Evolve show. My train was delayed, so I literally got there right as the main event ended. Like, the ref's hand hit 3, and the bell rang, and Joe Lanza was like, "Did you just get here?" Like, he was so confused and amazed by that. But
that is devastating to hear. I do not believe I've heard that before. That sucks.
Yeah, it was annoying, but even so, I still saw a lot of wrestling over the course of those 3 days. I mean, with the ROH New Japan MSG show, I went to the NXT Takeover show, I saw DDT, Rev Pro, I saw one of the WrestleCon shows, WXW. So I more than got my fill of wrestling, and I also got to meet a bunch of people in person for the first time, like Rich, Joe Lanza, Joe Gagne, Sean Sedor, John Carroll, Mike Spears, Joel and Damon from the J-Cast, Taylor Mainborg, whole bunch of cool people. So it was a very exhausting trip, no doubt, because there's not much time to rest when you've got all these shows in the schedule, but a very fulfilling one as well. And I'm glad I at least went to one of the Mania weekends, in my life, so I can, cross that off the list, I guess.
I concur, absolutely.
Yeah. But hey, as far as the music goes, I decided to focus on the mania of Mania Weekend, because we are playing songs about mental illness, whether it be mania, anxiety, depression, paranoia, obsession, suicidal thoughts, homicidal thoughts, pretty serious stuff, no doubt. But let's be honest, if you're gonna go to Mania Weekend and watch as many wrestling shows as you can, you have to be a little unstable to do that. That's not a totally sane thing to do. It's a fun thing to do. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not the surest sign of a well-balanced mind, perhaps, Case.
No, I've been dying to ask you for almost a week now if you wanted to have me on this show and then you came up with this topic, or if you came up with this topic and then said, I know who will be the perfect guest to talk about how mentally ill they are.
Little of column A, a little of column B, perhaps.
Look,
perhaps.
You found the right guy. I came up with a list of songs very, very quickly. I think a lot about my relationship with wrestling and as it pertains to mental illness, because it's especially funny now because we're recording this as there's some discussion going on and some discourse happening about greatest wrestler ever projects and, compiling a list of the 100 greatest wrestlers ever. And there's people that are lamenting over the fact that it's like, oh, well, I have so many gaps in my footage. Like, I haven't seen this and I don't know anything about this territory and whatever. And I obviously still have those, but I think back to when I was a sophomore and a junior in high school and how those weekends and those nights were spent diving into Stan Hansen's time in Puerto Rico and diving into 80s All Japan and watching every Toryumon clip under the sun. And it's not the type of thing that I would recommend to my future children, but it was the type of thing that in my life I was internally battling some things that perhaps made me shy away from social interaction a lot of the time. And so it's hard to explain to people now. Like I was on a date with somebody a few months ago, and I've known her for quite a while. We were going out, whatever. And she's somebody who likes going out a lot. And when I'm out with her, we're out very late. We're out at bars. We're out doing a lot of things that I typically don't do on my own. And she made the comment to me. She's like, I don't understand what your life was like before you met me, because when I met her, we started going out to bars and we got very late and all these things. And it was very hard to explain to her. Where I was like, yeah, I don't know, from like 15 to 22, before I was in like a pretty serious relationship, like all of my weekends were just like, what wrestling am I going to watch? It wasn't going out. And it's not that I had an aversion to it. I live in the third largest city in the country and I enjoy some aspect of nightlife. I obviously have a very deep passion for music and a very deep passion for live music at that. But as I start to retrace some of the steps in my life of how I got to where I got, a lot of it is like, oh, when I was 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, I was almost exclusively watching wrestling, and that has made for a very weird adult social life.
Honey, let me tell you about a guy named Masato Yoshino.
Yeah, they don't know. These are normal people. They don't know what's going on. And if you meet me now, like, I tell people, if they get to know me to a certain level, it's like, Tuesdays I'm busy, because normally we do Open the Voice Gate on Tuesday nights. This week it actually worked out because we're going to record it tomorrow night. But it's like, I do a podcast on Tuesdays, and then, you have to sort of brace yourself for the follow-up question of, oh, what's your podcast about? And I feel like over the years I've rehearsed this enough and just acted this out enough to where I can say that I do a podcast about Japanese wrestling in a way that comes across certainly not attractive or exciting, but in a way that is a little mysterious. You're curious. I can sell it in a way that doesn't make me sound like a complete insane person. But then when I take a step back and think about like, okay, I'm talking about not only Japanese wrestling, I'm talking about one specific Japanese wrestling company, or if I'm not talking about Dragon Gate, I'm talking about Michinoku Pro or Osaka Pro or Kyushu Pro, or these regionalized specific Japanese wrestling companies that the average Japanese person doesn't know about, and yet I seem to have this encyclopedic knowledge on. And that's a very weird thing to think about, and it's a very weird thing to have to share every once in a while.
I'm just picturing you. Okay, so there's this guy named Gran Hamada. He went to Mexico once, and he learned some stuff, and he came back to Japan, and you just kind of spiral out from there. But no, look, we all have our own little obsessions about things, our little anxieties, OCD, whatever it may be, and as long as it's not hurting anybody, I think it's okay. But we all have our little quirks, I guess you might say, and sometimes those quirks manifest in good ways, sometimes bad ways, but I think it's one of those universal things that we all kind of share, for sure. But let's get to the music here. We have 8 picks each and a play-out song at the end. Case, you are the guest. You'll go first. What's your first pick?
I'd be more than happy to introduce to the world. This is the song "All My Happiness Is Gone" by the band Purple Mountains.
Mounting mileage on the dash. Double darkness falling fast. I keep stressing, pressing. some substratum. Feels like something really wrong has happened. I confess I'm barely hanging on. All my happiness is gone. All my happiness is gone. It's all gone somewhere beyond. All my happiness is gone.
Andrew, were you at all familiar with that song before we played it for this podcast?
I was not.
Okay, so this is a song and an album that mean a great deal to me. David Berman was the singer of this band, Purple Mountains, but before that, he was more well known for the band that he was in called the Silver Jews, and they existed sort of parallel to the band Pavement. They shared members at various points in their history, and Silver Jews were on a record label called Drag City, which is based out of here in Chicago. And at the same time that Pavement were making a name and Beck was making a name, and you had this real indie rock renaissance in the mid-90s, the Silver Jews were right there, but they operated far differently than any of those other bands did. And despite their first album coming out in 1994, this is a band that did not tour until 2005, long after Berman had tried to kill himself for the first time, long after he had gone to rehab and gotten clean. He famously tried to kill himself in the hotel room where Al Gore found out that he lost the 2000 presidential election, because as he said, he wanted to die where democracy died. But he survived that suicide attempt, he got clean, and this band was largely mysterious for their entire existence. It wasn't really until they broke up that I feel like they started to garner any notoriety, because when they broke up, David Berman published a letter noting that he had this big secret throughout this entire time that he was in the band, that his father was a Republican lobbyist who was nicknamed Dr. Evil. You know, whatever sort of human degrading, human life worsening things that you could lobby for, his father was typically the one doing that. And he had this crisis in 2009 where he realized that his songs were not going to fix things, and he wasn't necessarily sure how to combat the things that were going on in his life with his father and with the world at large, but it didn't feel like music was necessarily serving a purpose for him anymore. And then he was largely off the grid from 2009 until that album came out in 2019. And I got into the Silver Jews when I was in high school. There's a folk punk band called AJJ who had covered their song Candy Jail. And I was so taken by the lyrics. I thought it was such a unique song. And I wanted to learn everything that I could about the Silver Jews, but there wasn't a lot to learn. Again, it was sort of a band shrouded in mystery. They didn't tour for the longest time. They didn't really do interviews. There wasn't a lot to learn. And even though this is by a time where, you know, streaming had taken hold and changed the way we listen to music, the Drag City label that they were on, their artists were not streaming until 2018. So I started collecting vinyl, in part because I wanted to have, you know, physical media, but also in part because it was kind of the only way that I could listen to the Silver Jews outside of weird YouTube rips. And, you know, sometimes they were super low quality and they were hard to find and you weren't really getting complete albums. And when I got into the Silver Jews and when I got into this Purple Mountains album, David Berman was a cult hero, but he wasn't somebody that was necessarily celebrated. And I think since this came out, which this came out in May of 2019, and it was just a complete surprise where one morning I was eating in my college dining hall and I was scrolling through Twitter and I saw that Pitchfork had posted that David Berman had a new project, which I never expected to happen. And it was a vinyl only release at first. The first few weeks the song was out, it was only available on a 12-inch single. And so I remember packing up my bag and just beelining towards the closest record store, which luckily was in walking distance, and like getting there and huffing and puffing and showing them the Pitchfork post and being like, do you guys have this? And they're like, yeah, it's not even out on the floor yet. Like, we literally just got the box. I was like, I need one of those to take home and listen to and study. And the nice thing about the Purple Mountains album is that it was very critically acclaimed. And David Berman had come out of his shell and he was doing a ton of interviews and he was more visible than he had ever been before. And he was all set to go on this tour in the summer of 2019 that felt like it was going to be a real triumph. And a few days before that tour, he took his own life. And it just, I'm gonna relate it to the Katsuyori Shibata tragic comment that Joe Lanza made a few years ago, where it felt like all too perfect of a tragedy that this man who had largely lived as an underground sort of folk hero had started to get the recognition that I felt he deserved, and right before he could tour America and be beloved every night, he took his own life. And so, the song is All My Happiness Is Gone. Sorry about that preamble about the band, but I just wanted to share that. It's not a subtle song. The hook is All My Happiness Is Gone. It was the first thing that I thought of when you asked me to do this show and when you gave me this topic, and I always go back to that second verse. I think there's so many clever lines in there because I think Berman is one of the greatest songwriters we've ever had. I now refer to things as life at first and goal to go, which he says in this song. There's that other line where he says nothing wrongs and no one's asking, but the fear so strong it leaves you gasping, which I think is a tremendous way to relay whether it be anxiety or depression and the things that people battle there. It's just a song that I remember exactly where I was the first time I heard it. I remember being blown away by it. The entire album is incredible, and this was the lead single and the first thing that came to mind when you gave me this topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you picked a real doozy to start us off with here. Good song, but a real doozy because, I never heard of this band before, but I saw the name David Berman, and I thought, that sounds familiar. And yeah, it's the guy from Silver Juice who was played on this show once before. Paul Wedding picked it many episodes ago, and I remember reading about his story and just how much of a downer it is and how badly depressed he was. And, when you kill yourself less than a month after the album comes out, then yeah, you've got some real bad demons going on there. But this is going to be a semi-recurring theme of the episode here where the song content is quite sad and dour. Feels like something really wrong has happened, and I confess I'm barely hanging on, but the fear so strong it leaves you gasping. No way to last out here like this for long. All my happiness is gone. It's a major cry for help, but the actual, the music is a lot lighter and more effervescent. It's not like a dirge or whatever. So there is that kind of, I guess a happy face of music over the dark lyrical soul, I guess. Between those kind of two sides there, Case.
I remember it being really exciting when we learned that his band for this project was primarily a band by the name of Woods, who I don't particularly enjoy their music on its own, but I think musically they're a very strong band. And then I know Kevin Morby, who is dating Waxahachie. I know he contributed to the album. Anna St. Louis, who I think is a brilliant and super underrated folk singer. She does backing vocals on a few of the songs on this album. It was just the type of thing that, it's weird now because he passed during this album cycle. I think it's only human nature that sometimes you go, oh, wow, this whole album was him telling us that he was going to kill himself. The songs on the album are All My Happiness Is Gone and Darkness and Cold and Maybe I'm the Only One for Me. And it's screaming out at you. But before that happened, that's not the tone that the press cycle was taking. It was one of those really joyous things. And Berman at the time talked openly about, he always used the phrase treatment resistant depression, where he's like, look, I know that I just live with a certain thing that's always going to be there. And it's just a matter of whether or not I can A, stay clean, and B, just fight off the urge to kill myself. And unfortunately, that eventually caught up to him, and it caught up to him in a really, really tragic and what I feel is unfair way. But this album came out, I feel like on this podcast, I was thinking about this right before we started recording, I feel like on this podcast, I'm going to reference dating and women a lot, which I have to note is in no way ever intended to be a flex or I'm out on the town, whatever. It's unfortunately, and I'm trying to work on this in my own life, where a lot of my mental health is wrapped up in whatever romantic relationship I'm either in or that I'm pursuing. And Purple Mountains came out, this song came out only a few days before my first long-term girlfriend broke up with me. And this album was written mostly after Berman's now widow, Cassie, had left him. And so it's this man who's talking about treatment-resistant depression, going through a divorce, and when you're 19 and go through your first very serious breakup, or 20 and go through your first very serious breakup, it felt like we were speaking the same language. It felt like the same thing. And so all of the overbearing, depressing tones immediately resonated with me. And I just think back to who I was during that summer and how unhappy I was and how lost I was with life and really unsure of what steps I was going to take next. And it seemed like this album just ran parallel and perfectly coincided with the things that I was going with. And so even though, like you said, it is a doozy, and it's one that, now occasionally will really sneak up on me. There's a song on the record called Snow is Falling in Manhattan, and I can't always listen to that song. It really cuts deep sometimes. But when it came out, it was exactly what I needed. Maybe not to be the uplifting spirit that, 9 out of 10 doctors would recommend, but it kept me company at a time where I was desperate for some level of company. And so I will always have fond memories of this record during a time that I don't necessarily look back fondly on.
Mm-hmm. Well, my first pick is also from the indie world, some indie royalty here. Death Cab for Cutie put out an album in 2008 called Narrow Stairs, and the song is called I Will Possess Your Heart.
There are days when outside your window I see my reflection as I slowly pass, and I long for this mirrored perspective when we'll be lovers at last. You gotta spend some time, love. You gotta spend some time with me, and I know that you'll find love. I will possess your heart. You gotta spend some time, love. You gotta spend some time with me, and I know that you'll find love. I will possess your heart. I will possess your heart. I will possess your heart.
A song about one of those hopeless romantics who's just looking for love and staring through windows. And she rejects his advances and desperate pleas, but she just can't see the potential. And if she just spends some time with him, she'll come around. He will possess her heart. It's a rather creepy song, both with the lyrics, but also just that long intro. It's like 4.5 minutes of this bass riff and the piano. Bum, 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 bum. I sort of picture it as the soundtrack to him just stalking this woman and just formulating all of these thoughts in his head and building up that obsession over time, and her just not noticing. So it's quite an effective song, Case.
I love Death Cab. I was not super familiar with this song, and when I saw the song length when I first started listening to it, it really jumped out to me as a departure for what that band typically does, because I think they're always so in the pocket with their 3.5 to 4 minute songs. I think it's a band that has a number of tremendous radio singles and then a number of tremendous deep cuts. Again, I did not really know this one, but I think you described it very, very well in that it really sort of straddles a line between a hopeless romantic yearning sort of anthem, and also this idea that this man might need help and that he might be stalking this poor woman, which is a really interesting thing to battle within one song.
Mm-hmm. Plus, you have Ben Gibbard, who has the most non-threatening, sensitive, nice guy voice around. Like, I don't listen to a lot of Death Cab, but I love the Postal Service and that one album. So to me, Ben Gibbard's voice is like a nice soothing pillow. He's not the first person I think of when I think of Sinister Urges, but it still works because there are a lot of nice guys out there who are masking this, darker side to them. So it works in that sense too, Chris.
I agree with that. I had the pleasure of seeing when they did the 20-year Postal Service tour, and also it was the 20-year anniversary of Transatlanticism by Death Cab. I had the pleasure of seeing that tour in a rather small venue for what that tour was in Chicago, and it really made me appreciate the talents of Ben Gibbard in a way that I was already a big fan of Death Cab, but seeing that tour and seeing him do both of those bands in the same night was really, really special. And then this past summer was the 20th anniversary of Plans, the Death Cab album, which has like I Will Follow You Into the Dark and Crooked Teeth, Soul Meets Body. That was the really big commercial Death Cab album. But outside of those 3 singles, that's a really dark, morose album. And I took somebody to that show who wasn't really a Death Cab fan. We just wanted to hang out. And I was like, well, I've got an extra Death Cab ticket through work. Like, why don't you come with me? And like the back half of Plans is brutal. I mean, the songs are great, but it's like we could have just broken down that album for this podcast. And I remember leaving, like getting outside of that theater we were in and being like, sorry I took that. Like, that was a bummer. I'm so sorry that you're here because you're not.
Are you okay? Why'd you take me to this thing? Like, are you all right?
I'm so sorry. So yeah, but that's a very good song. I was not really familiar with that, but it's Death Cab, so I really enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. All right, what you got next, Case?
This is a band that I feel like not a lot of people know about, despite their lead singer being incredibly influential on the world of punk and hardcore. This is the song Building by the band Embrace. So you have this Death Cab song that is kind of metaphorical and it's a little mysterious, and there's a few different ways you can interpret things. My first two songs, a song called All My Happiness Is Gone, and then a song that just repeats lines about being a failure over and over again, which I think speaks to my musical sensibilities, that I'm not necessarily looking for subtlety in my lyrical content. I sort of like people that just come right out and say it. So Embrace is a band that was fronted by Ian MacKaye, and a lot of people will know that name either as wrestling fans through Minor Threat, which was the impetus for CM Punk becoming straight edge, and by proxy, the impetus for me becoming straight edge, or through Fugazi, which is one of the more influential punk bands in the history. But in between those two bands, he had this group called Embrace, and they only put out one album. They didn't really play a ton of shows. The album came out after the band had already broken up. Like, the history of Embrace is very short and very odd, but they existed in what a lot of people look at to be the first wave of emo bands, or they would call it emo core. It was right after Washington, D.C., all the hardcore bands that started American hardcore stuff in the early 80s. That first generation of band broke up, and then the second wave came in, and they were less political, and they were far more emotional, and they were far less revolutionary and far more introspective. And so that's bands like Indian Summer, and that's bands like Rites of Spring, and that's bands like Dag Nasty. And I always thought Embrace was the best of the bunch, and I think it's the best thing that Ian MacKaye has ever done. I mean, Minor Threat changed my life. Minor Threat continues to influence me almost in my day-to-day existence. But the Embrace album, when I heard it, just cut right to the point. And I was in high school when I heard this. I was probably 16. And just having somebody yell when you're like me and you lack self-confidence a lot of the time, when you're not really sure in some of your decision making, to have somebody with the voice that Ian has just yelling over and over again, I'm a failure, I can't express the way that I feel without fucking up something else. That was so impactful then. And now that this record's been in my life for 11 years, it remains incredibly impactful, because at my worst, when my emotions go unchecked, I still feel like that kid listening to this for the first time, which is something that I'm working on, and I'm trying to maybe relate to this song less and less as I get older, but it's still there. And there is always a part of me that's going to deeply relate to the words of this song.
Yeah, I had to make sure I had the right band, because there's a British band called Embrace who've been around for a lot longer. But yeah, this is the American band, and I'm aware of Ian MacKaye and Minor Threat. I don't listen to that stuff, but I did see that, yeah, this band is seen as an emo pioneer, which makes sense because you have guys from the hardcore punk scene, but there is that post-punk sound in there too, and that kind of melody. It's not just screaming and thrashing around, and it is quite emo with the self-hatred too. I'm a failure, I'm always fucking up, etc. That self-loathing became a hallmark and a stereotype of the genre, and this is where it comes from, I guess. So yeah, very influential for sure.
Yeah, and I always like this wave of it where it feels a little bit more, I guess, adult-oriented or a little bit more grown-up. I mean, these guys were still so insanely young when they were putting out this second wave of music out of Washington, D.C., and then it's weird to think where it's like, they were like 20 when they were in Minor Threat, so they're still in their early 20s here, but I have a push and pull relationship with some of the bigger emo bands, and especially the culture surrounding some of those bigger emo bands that I don't particularly like. I will always compliment, there is a newer band called Hot Mulligan who have become very, very big, which it took, I think they're great, but I can't believe, given the sound of their music and what they do, that they've become as big as they have. But I had the pleasure of seeing them at the Aragon in Chicago a few years ago, and they had me fooled for a second because I started to get annoyed with the singer in between songs, did a thing where he was talking to the crowd and he goes, well, make some noise if you're really sad. And the place went nuts. And I started to get annoyed because I don't really like a celebration of self-deprecation, especially in the music scene. I find that to be rather counterintuitive. And I like that as soon as he did that and people, made noise and shot their hands up, he was like, you guys have to cut that out. We can't be in a room of 4,500 people talking about how much we suck. We need to uplift each other. And I thought that was a nice message because I find that, I don't know, emo can be a weird thing that attracts weird people that I don't necessarily always get along with. But I like this first wave of bands quite a bit because even if it's raw and to the point and not very poetic, I find the way that their lyrics come across perhaps to be a little bit more relatable and a little bit more grown up than some of the emo bands that followed them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you said about liking a certain type of music or a certain thing and seeing other fans of that and not really wanting to associate with them or relate to them. I understand that a lot for sure because I'm, as a Rick and Morty fan, as a big Rick and Morty fan or Smiling Friends or whatever, I see other fans and I'm like, I'm not with them. I'm not with them at all. But
I know that feeling very, very well. I feel that way, of course, about pro wrestling fans as well.
Of course, I was going to say that too, but my next pick, going back to 1978 with my pal Warren Zevon. This is the title track off his album "Excitable Boy."
He took little Susie to the junior prom. Excitable boy, they all said. Excitable boy. And he raped her and killed her, then he took her home. Excitable boy, they all said. Excitable boy. Well, he's just an excitable boy. After 10 long years, they let him out of the home. Excitable boy, they all said. Excitable boy. And he dug up her grave and built a cage with her bones. Excitable boy, they all said. Excitable boy. Well, he's just an excitable boy.
So first of all, a little fun fact. One of the women singing "Ooh, Excitable Boy" is Linda Ronstadt.
Oh, so, I adore her.
Yeah. And speaking of fun, Warren Zevon, known for his dark sense of humor and taking dark subjects and making entertaining songs out of them. And this is definitely one of them. It's a song about this excitable boy, this guy who starts off as this, little oddball, rubbing a pot roast on his chest, which is a real thing that Warren Zevon once did. And he ends up raping and killing his prom date and then digging up her grave and building a cage out of her bones, which Warren Zevon did not do in real life. But the song it's a real fun romp, with the jaunty rhythm and the saxophone and the background singers. Again, it's rather light music over a dark story, and it's just a great little song, Case.
Yeah, no, could have fooled me on the lyrical content because it sounds so fun and so nice. It is quite the dive when you really start to check out what he's saying in that song. I'm glad that this was on your playlist because this is a name that I feel like keeps coming up, and I think there's a lot of musicians right now that are taking a lot from Zevon and crediting him as a major influence, but it's a name that I feel like I'm reading a lot and I'm seeing a lot about, but I'm not necessarily listening to. And so this was a nice foray into his catalog.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've played a bunch on the show before and talked about him on the show before, but one of those guys who, he had a real dark streak in him. I mean, he was an alcoholic and a drug addict, physically abusive toward his wife, and he overcame that stuff. But I read his biography earlier this year, which is called "I'll Sleep When I'm Dead," and there's a fair amount of darkness in there. So I love Zevon, but I wouldn't call him a role model by any stretch, Case. So.
No, nor would I.
But anywho, Case, what is your next pick?
Next on my list is one of the more underappreciated musicians going today. She's from Australia. Her name is Julia Jacklin. This song is called Pressure to Party.
Pressure to feel fine after the fact. Out on the dance floor with my body back. Meeting a stranger, touching his face. I don't want anyone to ever take your place. Pressure to go strike out on your own. Pressure to learn from being alone. Pressure to not leave it for too long before you find another heart where you belong. Pressure to come up with conversation makes it fairly fine with my isolation. I know I've locked myself in my room, but I'll open up the door and try to love again soon. Try to love again soon. Try to love again soon. Try to love again soon.
So I never want to be in a position where I'm pitting women against one another. I do think we happen to live in this amazing era of these female singer-songwriters, whether it be Phoebe Bridgers, who we'll talk about later, or Waxahachie, or Julia Jacklin, or Angel Olsen, or Soccer Mommy, or Snail Mail, whoever it may be. We're rich right now with these brilliant women who do such a good job crafting these songs. I do think Julia Jacklin is the best of that bunch, and that is not a title that I give to her lightly, but I heard her for the first time in the fall of 2019. So this album that song is on, Crushing, had just come out. And so we're sort of in the time of my life where, again, like, I'm listening to a lot of Purple Mountains. I'm relating very much to that. And I just happened to stumble upon Julia Jacklin. First, it was her song, Don't Know How to Keep Loving You. And then second was the song Pressure to Party. And I just had such a euphoric reaction to her immediately. And I immediately had to go figure out when she was on tour and when she was coming to Chicago next. And she luckily, like 3 weeks later, was going to be in Chicago. And she was playing at a weird venue. Tickets were already sold out. It was really hard to get secondhand tickets. I eventually got them. I was there that night. It was such a brilliant performance. I think she's so incredible. But Pressure to Party is about a lot of different things, and there's a lot of different ways you can interpret it. I've listened to it a lot lately. As you know, over the last year, I got out of a pretty long-term relationship and started dating again, and that has been a very odd journey that at times has been really, really rewarding, and at times has been really, really frustrating. And this song sort of deals with moving on from somebody that you love really deeply and just what it looks like when you find that next person or those next people. And then I also think this song, just in a very bare bones way, although I personally, and this is something that I don't mean to put on anybody listening that subscribes to what I'm about to say, because I certainly empathize. Like, I don't ever want to think that my social anxieties hold me back. I don't really like the phrase social anxiety. I don't like using it. I don't really like thinking that I have it, and then I take one step back and I go, oh no, I have very intense social anxiety that I'm still, like, even if I've made a ton of progress in my life and I am far more comfortable being in crowds or talking to people in specific contexts in a way that I used to not be, I still have a world of improvement. There's still a number of things that I can get better at. And I feel like this song encapsulates that in a way that I'm not really sure I've ever heard another song do.
Yeah, this was really good. Just seeing the title, I thought that it was just about the pressure to party just in general. Like seeing other people hanging out and having fun and feeling guilty about not going out and joining them, which, you know, as a homebody, I definitely relate to. But then I heard the song, and yeah, it's more about the pressure to get back out there after a breakup. And Try to Love Again Soon, as the song says, which I can't say I relate to that part myself, but still, I totally get what she's saying in terms of needing some time after a tough moment. I think everybody has those periods where we need a break before we can get back out there in whatever, way that is, whether it's about something romantic or not, Case.
Yes, I would agree with that. And I think that is a lesson that I've had to learn somewhat recently, as I told Mike Spears off air a few weeks ago, because we do Open the Voice Gate, which is a weekly Dragon Gate podcast, but we try to every month do these Mitch Doku Pro retrospective podcasts called Those Days, and we had fallen a little bit off schedule. And then a few weeks ago, I told Mike, Mike, for the foreseeable future, I am not allowing myself to go on dates or date anybody, which is good news for the crowd that loves Those Days, because it means we could do way more Mitch Doku Pro episodes now. So I got out of a very long-term relationship last year. It's just about a year ago. And I rather quickly started dating again. And then very quickly after that, became entangled with somebody that has dramatically altered my mental state in many different ways over the course of the last 9 months or so. And so I finally hit a point where I was like, I think I have to hit pause, and I think that might be very good for me. So Julia Jacqueline, Pressure to Party, a really excellent song.
Women Schwimmen. Grananiwa. That's what you got to go for there. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Well, speaking of women, my next pick has a female front person, a female singer here. This is Paramore with their album After Laughter from 2017. And this is the song Hard Times.
Walking around with my little rain cloud hanging over my head, and it ain't coming down. Where do I go? Give me some sort of sign. They hit me with lightning. Maybe I'll come alive. Hard times gonna make you wonder why you even try. Hard times gonna take you down and laugh when you cry. These lights, and I still don't know how I even survive. Hard times. Hard times. And I gotta hit rock bottom. Tell my friends I'm coming down. We'll kick it when I hit the ground. Tell my friends I'm coming down. We'll kick it when I hit the ground. When I hit the ground. When I hit the ground.
Yeah, yet another song, much like Excitable Boy, where the music doesn't really match the lyrics, because the song is about Hayley Williams suffering from depression and band drama and all that stuff, walking around with my little rain cloud hanging over my head and an ache coming down. Hard times gonna make you wonder why you even try. So yeah, pretty sad stuff there. And yet, the music is so bubbly and joyful and funky. This is, a transition away from the pop punk era of the band into a more new wavy, straight up pop kind of side of things there. And it's just so catchy and it's so much fun. It's like bathing in cotton candy, it's so sweet. But yeah, they still make great music no matter what kind of sound they're making there, Case.
I love this song. I felt like I missed Paramore growing up. They were always just sort of adjacent to whatever I was listening to, and then when they came back a few years ago and put out This Is Why, I had the pleasure of seeing them at the Chicago Theater, which again is a pretty small room for that band, and I was just so impressed, and I was so blown away by their entire catalog. And this is a song that when it came out, like I don't know, I missed it for whatever reason. And so it was only a few years ago that I got really into this band and really into this song. And I think she's incredible. I love her solo record that she put out last year. I think Paramore is an excellent band, and I'm very glad that this is on your list because I think it kicks ass.
Oh yeah, it's great. I mean, the whole album touches on depression and anxiety and all that. It's called After Laughter, and Hayley Williams said that it's about the look on people's faces when they're done laughing. If you watch somebody long enough, there's always this look that comes across their face when they're done smiling. And I always find it really fascinating to wonder what it is that brought them back to reality. So it's kind of like they kept the angst of their pop punk emo roots, just transplant it into this, new wave disco-y kind of sound there, Case. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great read on it. I mean, I think she's one of those people that, I love her music and I love her as a performer. I also put her in the camp that I put Maddie Healy into, that I put Billy Corgan into, or I just like listening to them speak. It just so happens that I like the art that they make, but I find, whether it be their philosophy on life or their philosophy on the music industry or their creative process, whatever it may be, I find them to be really interesting people. And I think Hayley Williams, whenever I get the chance to listen to her speak, I go out of my way to listen because I think she's an incredibly interesting person. And I think she's in a really interesting era where I don't know if she's more popular than ever. I do think she's more beloved than ever. And I think she has a more passionate fan base than ever. And she's in a very interesting point of her career where she's got the solo record and she's, working with Turnstile a lot, and she seems to be doing cool things. And I don't know if she's running from Paramore or if they're just on one of their many hiatuses. I don't know what their deal is, but I find every move that she makes to be a really interesting one. And I like that she continues to stay true to her voice and her sound, while also whatever band is playing behind her always doing new and interesting things. And I've enjoyed watching the evolution of her, I guess listening to the evolution of her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's staying busy for sure. I mean, on the year-end episode last year in December, I closed out the episode with a David Byrne song called "What Is the Reason for It," and she's on it. She does guest vocals on it. So yeah, solo, Paramore, other bands going on there. She's always doing something. So that's pretty cool. But all right, Case, what is your next pick?
All right, so number 4, these are my guys. This is Militarie Gun. I'll talk about my relationship with them and my relationship with the song afterwards. The song is "Thought You Were Waving." So Militarie Gun are one of my favorite 2 active bands. We'll actually hear my other favorite current band in just a minute. But 2 weeks ago, I saw Militarie Gun for the 15th time. I've been at every Chicago show they've ever played. The first time they played here, it was a room of 50 people. They were downstairs at a place called Subterranean. I just watched them as direct support for Joyce Manor in front of 3,000 people. This is a band that I've interviewed a number of times in my shoot job. I think the world of all of these guys as people and as creatives. And Thought You Were Waving is a song that I liked when it came out. It immediately just struck a chord with me, but I think as time has gone on and I've seen the band play this song live a number of times, the thing that has elevated it in my mind is the singer Ian Shelton, who again, I think he's one of the most brilliant minds around. He'll do an intro for this song that is rather complex, and I don't always have verbatim, or I don't have verbatim what he says, but the gist of it is, the point of this song is that he feels like a lot of the time he is trying to telegraph that he is having these issues and that he needs help and that he wants somebody to ask how they can assist him, and that everybody is so caught up in their own lives that they don't see that he's very clearly drowning. And that's not to diss anybody. That's just the reality of it, is that we're all caught up on our own thing. And a lot of the times we miss, whether it be warning signs or cries for help or whatever it may be from other people. And one of the things that I'm trying to process as I get a little bit older is that I am somebody that tends to run a little bit hot. I can be prone to outbursts of anger in a way that in both a professional setting and in a personal setting is not always appropriate. And I'm trying to figure out in my life right now why that is and why there are some people that I can spend a great deal of amount of time with and that they don't wear their emotions on their sleeve and that nobody really knows a lot about them or what they're feeling or what they're going through. And I'm somebody who where if I'm angry, people are going to know that I'm angry. And if I'm upset, people are going to know I'm upset. And whatever I have going on in my life, I'm going to overshare whether people ask or not. And I guess in some way that might be a strength because I think in some way it makes people open up to me and I really enjoy listening to them. But I'm trying to figure this out. And I think, you know, the bare bones conclusion that I can come to is that, you know, as a kid, sort of as we talked about at the beginning of this episode, I was alone a lot and I was, you know, very much somebody who self-isolated and had to process very complex and very confusing emotions and stages of life by myself. And I sort of desperately just wanted somebody to ask if I was okay, and that didn't really happen. And now as I sit here at 27, like, I still kind of desperately want somebody to just, like, put their arm around me at times and just say that it's going to be okay. And it doesn't always happen. And that's what Thought You Were Waving is about. And I think it's the first time that I've heard somebody else talk about, like, hey, sometimes I have to act up or act really outrageous or act really loud just to get somebody's attention, just so that they know something is going on with me. And that's unfortunately something that I very much relate to and something that I'm working on. But at the end of the day, it is something that I ultimately relate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the helplessness is something that I can relate to. Just feeling so overwhelmed and so stressed and not really knowing what to do. And it can feel like drowning if it gets too much. I remember years ago at work, I was working an overnight shift and I was running the board for a talk radio show. And the station that I work for is one where if police need to send out an Amber Alert, they go to us. We send it out for them, you know. And I got a call from police about an Amber Alert and there's no one else there. It's just me and the host. It's like 1 a.m. or whatever. So I had to man the board in master control, and then run over to a different studio, record the police officer's alert message there, run back to master control, broadcast the message out, make sure the host knows what's going on, make sure the callers didn't swear, make sure we're still on the air, all that stuff. Like, there was so much stress going on, and pressure and anxiety, and I just wanted to scream, somebody help me, please. Somebody help me do this thing. But there was no one there. And luckily I got through it. You know, I didn't freeze like you know, the song says there. But I can definitely relate to just that kind of anxiety for sure, Case.
Yeah, it's really tough. You know, you and I do very similar things for a living. And, you know, I work with a co-host who is very good about reminding me that I can have an issue and it doesn't need to result in me yelling at somebody, which is something that I sometimes struggle to remember. And that's something that I'm working on. And it's, you know, it ultimately comes from a place of, again, like you said the word helplessness, and that's what it is. And I try in life to not be helpless in any sort of capacity, but occasionally that happens. And, you know, I'm trying in my own life to sort of rewire, not the effort that I put into people in a way of like, well, if they're not going to give me exactly what I'm giving them, then I'm not going to bother. Like, I think that's a very selfish way of looking at things. And I don't think every relationship needs to be transactional where I do this for you and you do this for me. But I think, you know, with the people that I truly care about, which is a pretty small circle of people, you know, I try to give them everything that I possibly can, and I try to be there for them and in whatever capacity that I can be. And that isn't always met in the sort of same energy or the same response. And I'm learning to be okay with that, because if I care about that person to a great degree, then that should just be it. And I don't need anything from them that they're not willing to give me. And so I'm sort of balancing that in my life right now. But it's been something that has chased me my entire life. Is, you know, I have been prone to having a bad attitude and to being somebody that is known to have outbursts of anger and that is very hyper emotional. and that sort of sucks, but I'm trying to get to the root of like why that is, and I just think a lot of it was a lot of my adolescence was spent sort of processing these emotions alone, and now when I feel something really strong, it's like I'm gonna make it everybody else's problem. Like I'm not gonna go through this alone this time, and that's probably a bad way of going about things.
Well, I watched the video for this, and it touches on this kind of topic here because it has the band in all of these crazy situations, like a guy breaking into a house and there's a girl tied up and calling for help, and a house is burning, and some guy is burying a body, and they're not saving the day, they're not stopping anything, they're just kind of letting it all happen, pretty much. So it's in line with the song and the message of not intervening when you need to intervene, perhaps. And also, as an aside, I don't mean to insult these fine men. They look exactly how I thought they would look. I mean, lead singer in a wife beater, chubby guy with glasses and a bunch of tattoos. There's a guy with a mustache, preppy looking guy. It's checking off all the boxes there, Case.
Yeah, the first time I interviewed this band, I told the preppy looking guy, I asked them what they had been on a pretty long tour at that point. I asked what they had been listening to in the van, and that guy's name was Waylon, and he's like, well, when I'm driving, I normally just sit there in silence, and I go, oh, like a serial killer. And he didn't really think that was funny, and then I would say that a later date I had to sort of smooth my relationship over with Waylon, but I think these guys are brilliant. I really enjoy my time whenever I'm around them in any sort of social scenario, which is not that often. I don't want to imply that we're great friends or anything, but as a live band, I think they're as good as it gets, and I hope that they only get bigger because I think they're absolutely fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Well, making a left turn here with my next pick. Back in 2003, a little band called the Black Eyed Peas teamed up on a song with another little band called Papa Roach. This is off of the album Ella Funk. This is simply called Anxiety.
Anxiety's bashing my mind and terrorizing my soul like Bin Laden. But I ain't falling down, bro. I won't lose control, bro. Shackled and chained, my soul feels stained. I can't explain, gotta itch on my brain. Lately, my whole aim is to maintain and regain control of my mainframe. My blood's boiling, it's beating out propane. My train of thoughts more like a runaway train. I'm in a fast car, driving in the fast lane. In the rain, and I might just hydroplane. I don't fear none of my enemies, and I don't fear bullets from Uzis. I've been dealing with something that's worse than these. To make it fall to your knees, and that's the anxiety. Sane and the insane rivalry. Paranoia's run me to my knees. Lord, please, 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 take away my anxiety. Sane and the insane rivalry. Paranoia's run me to my knees. Lord, please, 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 take away my anxiety. My head keeps running away, my brother. The only thing making me stay, my brother.
So I'm being totally sincere when I say that this is not a meme pick or an irony pick. I genuinely like this song. I like the mashup of the rap flow and the metal. I like the softer guitar bits in there at times. And the way that contrasts with the crunchiness and the power and the rest of the song. The lyrics, look, they're not amazing. I will admit that. But I don't really listen to Black Eyed Peas for the lyrics, you know? I will say, though, there is one line that I did want to highlight from will.i.am, which is, anxieties bash my mind in, terrorizing my soul like Bin Laden. And from what I read, the band was suffering from 9/11 related anxiety while recording the album, because it happened like a few weeks into recording. And as someone who remembers 9/11 and all the craziness that happened afterwards, that's pretty understandable, Case.
Yeah, when you sent me this, I thought, surely this must be a typo. There's no way that the Black Eyed Peas and Papa Roach have a song together and that I haven't heard it before. Just from an anecdotal standpoint, I should have come across this at some point in my life. I had not. It was not a typo. I was not expecting the 9/11 tie-in. I think that's fascinating. I think these two bands together is such a fascinating concept. This isn't exactly Jay-Z and Linkin Park coming together for Collision Course, but I'm very glad that it exists just for the pure oddity of it all.
And there is actually video of them performing the song live on a show. I think it's the only.
Well, I will be checking that out.
Yeah, it's on YouTube. Look it up. It's pretty incredible. But this is also the first album with Fergie, and I brought this up on the Gimmick Changes episode with Jeremy last year. When Fergie comes along, the group shifts gears from this backpack rap, alt hip hop style, and leans more into the pop side of things, which is another bit of anxiety there to deal with, I think, because you're diverting from your music to something else. But the head of the label was like, listen, you're not selling albums, you're not making money. If you want to change that, you should go pop. And fair enough, it worked out for them pretty well, Case.
I think Let's Get It Started is like a Pantheon level pop song. It's kind of one of those where I can't believe it took somebody so long to write that song. It feels like it was just out there in the ether waiting for somebody to grab. And it's weird to think that it was not until the mid-2000s that song actually came to be in the way that it was. I think the history of the Black Eyed Peas is fascinating in that they do have that harsh pivot. And they got so big with Fergie for that 6 or 7 year period that it just obliterated what had come before that era. I mean, I would say most people my age probably do not know that there was an era of the Black Eyed Peas without Fergie. And then they have that run from about 2004 to 2011 where they're doing the Super Bowl halftime show when they're everywhere. And they have that string of number one hits in 2009 and 2010 and 2011 where they are one of the single biggest music entities that there are. And then it was just over. And it was over so quickly, and it was over so harshly. And now I don't know what it is, as the music industry just continues to dig their heels in, largely on nostalgia and not creating new acts, but relying on things that were popular 20 years ago. And they have their reasons for that, and I understand to some degree why that is. But like the Black Eyed Peas are not a part of that. There's nobody my age that is, say, excited for the new Hillary Duff tour because it's Hillary Duff and she might do a few Lizzie McGuire songs and they didn't get to see that as a kid, or they remember seeing that as a kid and it makes them feel good that they can now see it again. No one is going, God, I wish the Black Eyed Peas would tour again. Oh, if I could just hear I Got a Feeling live one more time, that would fix me. Like, that band had a purpose and they exited, and I don't see the gate opening for them to come back in, which I think is so interesting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think part of it is Fergie's no longer with them. She left the band and they replaced her with J. Ray Soul, which, fair enough, she's a good singer, but I think when people think of Black Eyed Peas, they think will.i.am, Apple Diab, Taboo, and Fergie. Like, it's that foursome together. So it might be difficult to drum up, massive interest if it's not those four specific people all at once. So
yes, I think even if Fergie came back, I think people would still struggle to care. They existed in a vacuum, and that time in history is gone. And we have, again, they have a pantheon of 9 or 10 pop hits, some of which are great, some of which are some of the most annoying songs I've ever heard. But they have their legacy, and that is what it is. And it's not a very long run, but it's a very impactful run.
Mm-hmm. All right, what you got next, Case?
Well, speaking of not long runs, but very impactful runs, I would not be doing my job if I did not include a selection from what I feel is the greatest band to ever exist. This is the Smiths, and this is the song Well, I Wonder. So like I said, I think the Smiths are the greatest band to ever exist. They're my favorite band of all time. I remember very, very vividly the first time that I heard them. It was at a time in my life where I was in high school getting really into hardcore music and getting really into folk punk music. And so a lot of the things that I was listening to at the time were overly simplistic, very simple recordings, very direct lyrics, very sparse instrumentation. And I had a friend who I'm still tight with show me How Soon Is Now, which, if anybody knows that song, it has, that crazy tremolo intro with the guitars. And I remember pretty immediately being like, oh, this sucks. Like, I don't like this. I don't know what this sound is coming off of Johnny Marr's guitar, but I'm not interested in exploring this any further. And him knowing me as well as he did even by that point in our lives, he's like, no, you're going to love the Smiths. Let me give you one more song. And he played This Charming Man. And the amount of time where I had the negative reaction to How Soon Is Now, I had just an otherworldly reaction to This Charming Man. And rather immediately, and this is a goofy thing to say out loud, I certainly don't say this with pride, but rather immediately, Morrissey changed my life and changed the outlook on my life, and the Smiths just completely transformed me as a person. The most impactful entity in media that has ever existed in my life. And, listening to that band and learning about that band taught me a lot about the history of the music industry and a lot about British music and a lot about British culture and things that I now care really greatly about. And the thing that I always tell people, and I'll give you the same monologue, is I think it's lazy analysis to categorize the Smiths as a sad band. I think a lot of people focus on the more maudlin aspects of the Smiths, and it sometimes overrides or overpowers the truth, which is that they're a very angry band. This is still a band rooted in a sort of post-punk society coming very shortly after the Sex Pistols and the Clash took over England. And they're still largely existing in that universe, even if the sound is not exactly the same. I gravitate towards the anger of the Smiths more than I do the sadness. But as we talk about mania and depression and anxiety and all these things, there is not a sadder Smith song than Well, I Wonder. It is the song that Morrissey has never performed live, that Johnny Marr has never performed live in his solo endeavors, because they both feel like they can't really live up to what the studio version was, the magic of the studio version. It's just one of the most beautiful recordings I've ever heard off of what I think is the best Smiths album, Meat is Murder, and this is really the thing that puts it over the top for me.
Yeah, I am not shocked at all to see this on your list. Because I know that you're just a big Smiths fan and Morrissey fan in general and all that. But also, and I will be a lazy analyst here when I say this, Morrissey is one of our most iconic sad boys.
My God, absolutely. And don't get me wrong, there are sad Smith songs. Last Night I Dreamt That Somebody Loved Me, Asleep, Well, I Wonder. They exist. I think the more interesting aspect of the Smiths is, especially on those first two records, the anger that came out of him. It really even into Queen is Dead, not so much on Strange Ways, but you're right, an all-time iconic sad boy.
Mm-hmm. And this song in particular, this is like Kobashi in Budokan. Like, he is in his element here. Well, I wonder, do you hear me when you sleep? I hoarsely cry. Well, I wonder, do you see me when we pass? I half die. Please keep me in mind. So, yeah, again, I'm not surprised at all. I'm actually more surprised you were able to parse it down to just one pick, Case, for being honest.
Yeah, it took me a second because, especially at this point in my life, like, I find myself listening to Morrissey's solo catalog more than I listen to the Smiths, just because I think the solo catalog is so interesting, and I think so much of it is so underrated. I think Vauxhall and I is the greatest album ever, and that was his solo album from 1994. I think it's better than anything that he did with the Smiths. So it was really hard when you factor in both of those acts to narrow it down. But I took a second to think about it, and I always come back to Well, I Wonder as just an absolute feat of recording technology, and I'm so glad that song exists and that we have it in the way that we do. And, Please Keep Me in Mind is a very powerful sentence used in this song, and it is the type of thing where, we just talked about with, Thought You Were Waving. Sometimes I'm desperate for people to want to reach out to me and just ask how I'm doing, and I think Please Keep Me in Mind, that being sort of the apex of this song, follows a similar sentiment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I assumed you were going to pick this, so I didn't have to worry about it. And I wasn't going to pick these guys anyway, just because, like, I said this about Lou Reed on the last episode. I have a limited tolerance of Morrissey. I like some songs here and there. How Soon Is Now, which you mentioned earlier, amazing song. I love it.
Yes, I've since come around on How Soon Is Now, yes.
And I love Johnny Marr. I love that dude. But yeah, Stevie Mo, not on my list of favorites. And to be honest, it's mainly because of him. and his bullshit more than the music. Like, he makes it very, very hard on himself to be liked. I mean, him, canceling shows is like a meme at this point. But last year, he was going to play a show in Boston, and he canceled it because someone made a threat on his life. It turns out... I know,
because...
someone did make a threat on his life, but it was for a show in Ottawa the week before, and that show went through. Nothing happened. The guy got charged. So, yeah, he's just an ass. That's all I can say about Morrissey. He's just an ass.
No, I have no argument against that. I was following that story very closely because shortly after Boston on that tour date was Chicago, and I was very, very worried that we were going to lose Chicago too. But luckily, I've had tickets to 4 Morrissey shows. I've seen him 4 times. He shows up every time. For me and Dr. Keith Lipinski, we're always there together, having a grandiose time with one another and with Morrissey. There's a political aspect of Morrissey that is not worth diving into now on this specific podcast. But as he gets older, I disagree more and more with his political opinions, and it's very sad that he's going down the path that he's going down. The show cancellations and some of the quotes that he gives and just his general existence, I understand why people hate him. I find it to be endlessly charming for whatever reason.
Fair enough. Well, for my next pick, we're going to go from Morrissey to Horsey. I don't know. It's all I got here. It's Band of Horses. This is from their album Cease to Begin, and this is the song Is There a Ghost?
I could sleep. I could sleep. I could sleep when I lived alone. Is there a ghost in my house? When I lived alone, is there a ghost in my house? My house.
So I guess Ben Bridwell, the main guy there, was not feeling too lyrically creative when he wrote this song, because those are the only lyrics in this entire thing. I could sleep, when I lived alone, is there a ghost in my house? And that's it. But I do love this song, and the way it kicks in about a minute in. So what it lacks in lyrics, it makes up for in spirit, no pun intended there. And as for why it's on here, there's an interview where Ben says that he gets really bad paranoia. And this song is about the feeling of being watched when you're alone. And he says it was based on an ice maker in his house that was freaking him out. So a funny little origin story there, Case.
I love this band. I love this song. Very glad to see it on here. I like how simple the lyrics are and how repetitive the lyrics are. I think that really works in the context of this song. I think this band is incredible. I've always said, I'm not saying Laredo by Band of Horses is the greatest song ever written, but if somebody approached me and said, I think Laredo by Band of Horses is the greatest song ever written, I would not have a very strong argument against it. I find that song to be perfect in every conceivable way. And this song is not that far behind. I think very few bands like this exist, period. I think, especially right now, we're in a drought of bands like this where it doesn't really matter what the lyrical content is. They just have a way of getting this emotion out of me as a listener that, I'm not like a diehard Band of Horses guy, but every time I hear them, I just sort of marvel at what they're doing and how good they are. And I finally saw them last year. They had eluded me for quite a while, but I saw them last year at the Riv here in Chicago. And it was a really emotional evening. It was a really nice night. And I find that their best songs, that upper echelon of Band of Horses songs, are as good as anything that I think any American band has produced in the last 25 or 30 years. And this would go on that list for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is one of those cases where this is the only song of theirs I know, but I love it, and it does play off a common fear of being alone in your house at night and you hear a bump or a noise and it just rattles you. Now, as someone who lives in a very small studio apartment, the only noise that I hear is the sound of my fridge because it's 2 feet from my bed.
Yes.
Otherwise, I don't have enough room for ghosts. I just don't.
I'm with you. I also right now I'm in a stage of my life where I'm living in a very small studio apartment, and it's jarring how quiet it can get sometimes in a way that I'm just never fully comfortable with. And as I got an email today with a lease renewal and I'm looking at getting out of here, I don't know. I live in Chicago and normally it's very loud, but this apartment, there is something about it that just drowns out all the outside noise. And there have been times over the last year where I've been forced to live in a certain level of silence that I do not enjoy whatsoever. I
like the silence because I need it for sleep. And I can get pretty annoyed if I don't get it, but I hear you for sure. But all right, Case, what you got next for us?
This is my favorite current band. This is a band called Spiritual Cramp. This song is called "I Feel Bad Being Me." This band was a pandemic discovery for me. I just happened to stumble across their name as I was looking up something about a band called Fiddlehead, who very easily have a few songs that could belong in this theme that we're doing. But I thought the name was cool. I didn't realize at the time that it was inspired by a Christian death song. And I was so attracted to their sound immediately. As somebody that really likes the Clash and really likes the Jam and really likes the mod lifestyle, you know, I myself am a big proponent of the Fred Perry Polo and some Doc Martens, and I felt immediately that this band scratched an itch that I had been looking for a modern band to do. And I think since this song came out, which this came out in 2018, you know, they've only grown as a band, and I've had the pleasure of working with them in a professional setting a number of times now, and they're some of my favorite people within the music industry. And I find this song to nail the sound and the feeling of paranoia and anxiety in a way that few other songs do, and for that reason, it's on this list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, first of all, great name, Spiritual Cramp, love it. Second of all, the music, I like it a lot. I love the energy. That bump, 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 bump. That reminds me a lot of London Calling by The Clash. Very similar tone for sure. The thing is, I had no idea what the hell the guy was singing. I need to look up the lyrics. And there are some good lyrics here. I want to come on like an earthquake. Instead, I come on like a headache. That's a great line. It's just hard to make out the way he sings it. But I guess when the majority of the lyrics are just, oh, I feel bad being me, it's a write-off case, I guess.
Yeah, again, it's sort of one of those songs where I don't need a ton of metaphors in my lyrics, and I don't need any giant overarching themes that are maybe a little bit hard to grasp. I like when lyricists cut straight to the point, and I think it does that in this song, and it gets to the root of paranoia in a way that I think is really, really interesting.
Mm-hmm. I also thought that they were British at first, but no, they're from California, like Militarie Gun is. And that's not crazy because, you know, SoCal is very much a hotbed of punk music and has been for decades. But yeah, I thought they were Brits. How about that?
I think they would love to hear that. This is a band that started in the Bay Area, and they're very loyal to San Francisco. And since the release of this song, their lead singer, Mike, has moved to LA for reasons related to what his wife does for a living. And the most recent album they put out is a lot about how he struggles living in LA compared to San Francisco. And I think it's a very interesting concept that he brings up in a few different songs. But to me, these guys are my favorite modern band. I think they're the best live band there is. They have toured extensively with Rise Against and the Hives over the last few years. Both of those bands have taken a real liking to Spiritual Cramp. I just had the pleasure of seeing them as a headliner in Chicago, and they crushed it. And then the next day they came into an acoustic session for our radio station, which, God willing, will be out soon. I don't know the release date of that, but that includes an interview with me and the band again. I think these guys are the absolute best thing going today.
All right, cool. Well, my next pick, this is the earliest song on my list. It's from 1971, and it's by Alice Cooper, back when it was still the Alice Cooper Band, and not just him solo. This is from the album Love It to Death, and this song is called Ballad of Dwight Fry.
She's only 4 years old. I'd give her back all of her playthings, even the ones I stole. See my lonely life unfold. I see it every day. See my lonely mind explode when I've gone insane. I want to get out of here. I want to get out of here. I've gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here.
So, Love It to Death is the third Alice Cooper album, but it's the start of the band as we know it, which is the hard rock sound mixed in with the theatrical shock rock stylings, and this song exemplifies that. It starts off with that little kid voice, "Mommy, where's Daddy? He's been gone for so long." And it's about a guy in a mental ward. See my lonely life unfold, I see it every day. See my lonely mind explode since I've gone away. I think I lost some weight there, and I'm sure I need some rest. Sleepin' don't come very easy in a straight white vest. And there's that great bit in the middle where he's just freaking out. I gotta get out of here, I gotta get out of here, I gotta get out of here, let me out of here. It's only audio, but you can still picture him, in the straitjacket, just screaming his head off. Just a really, creepy song that really paints a good picture there. And as for the name, Dwight Fry, that's a tribute to the actor Dwight Fry, Frye. The song is Fry, but Dwight Fry, the actor, he played Renfield in the Bela Lugosi Dracula. And he had these big eyes and this really disturbing smile. Just a really unsettling guy to look at, and the perfect namesake for this kind of song, Case.
I would agree with that. I don't know a ton of Alice Cooper's work. It's never really been a thing that has struck me, but I will say that lyrically, like you said, even though it's all audio, I found this to be a very visually compelling song. I think these things are interesting to think about, and this was one of Cooper's songs that I was entirely unfamiliar with, so I'm glad that I got a chance to listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the funny thing is, Alice Cooper would, later in the 70s, spend time in a sanitarium for alcoholism. And after he got out, he made an album called From the Inside, which is about his experiences there and the people he met inside. So I had some other choices I could make for Alice there, that's for sure. So, yeah.
I did not realize that. I did not realize that he often touched on these subjects. That is new info to me.
Oh, yeah. He, like Zevon, he had his demons with the alcohol and the drugs. In fact, I think I brought this up on an episode before, but there is a period of his life that is called the Blackout years, where he made 3 albums back to back to back. He has no memory of recording any of them because he was so blasted out of his mind. So he definitely had some problems there. But again, he got through them and he's okay now. So it's a good ending there for sure. But all right, Case, what is your second to last pick here?
Yeah, coming down the backstretch, we've done the Smiths, we've done Purple Mountains. Those are all very obvious picks for me. And I think the third prong in that three-headed dragon, I think we would be remiss if we didn't have some Phoebe Bridgers on this playlist. And my pick from one of the many Phoebe Bridgers songs you could pick from is the song "I See You."
Last time, but I feel something when I see you now. I feel something when I see you. If you're a work of art, I'm standing too close. I can see the brush strokes. I hate your mom. I hate it when she opens her mouth. It's amazing to me how much you can say when you don't know what you're talking about. But I feel something when I see you now. I feel something when I see you.
One of my few regrets in life is that my freshman year of college, I had a chance to go see Phoebe Bridgers play in a 300 cap room, and I declined the opportunity to go, and that has haunted me over the course of the last 9 years. That is really an upsetting thing to think about. I think she's incredible. I think she's incredible in Boy Genius, which I know we'll listen to in just a second. I think she's incredible as a solo artist. I love the work that she's done as a producer for Christian Lee Hudson. I think she's just a hilarious presence to have in this world. I love what she did with Conor Oberst and Better Oblivion Community Center, their little side project. This song has evolved in the way that I feel about it over the years, where, when it came out in 2020, I was at a stage in my life where I really related to the idea of what she says in the song, where she says, I've been playing dead my whole life, and I get this feeling whenever I feel good that it'll be the last time. And that is still something that I wrestle with a lot, where if things are going too well, I will feel impending doom because I know that at some point everything that goes up must come down. And so it makes it really hard to have any sort of sustained happiness in my life. As I get older and I experience more things, and I try to live a little bit more than I used to, and maybe not go through life playing dead, going through the end of a relationship almost a year ago, I do really analyze, or I guess pull out rather the lines in the song now. If I used to light you up, now I can't even get you to play the drums because I don't know what I want until I fuck it up. And I made the joke to somebody recently, the best thing that you can do to get me to fall in love with you is to break up with me, and then I will really love you forever and ever. Just as a recurring trend in my life, I'm noticing where when a relationship ends is when I really start to talk about how much I love and respect that person. And so, it's just one of those things that I have to think about. It's a weird thing to sort of sit there and take in, to realize that at one point in your life, you were this incredibly exciting entity to this person. And then at another point, they kind of hated you. And it's a very weird thing to wrestle with and to sit with and to wonder sort of where that timeline stacks up and where some of those things came to be. And so as I live throughout this current iteration of my life, that's the line that really jumps out to me there, which is unfortunately a pretty depressive outlook, but one that nevertheless I relate to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just wondering if Phoebe Bridgers is a BoJack Horseman fan, because there's an ICU joke on that show. Who knows? But yeah, another post breakup song here, and yeah, that push and pull of feeling bad about yourself, blaming yourself for the breakup, but she still feels something for the ex. I feel something when I see you now. And she also feels something for his mother, apparently, and that something is hatred. I hate your mom. I hate it when she opens her mouth. It's amazing to me how much you can say when you don't know what you're talking about. And I looked it up. I guess that's based on a true story of them getting into a fight in Whole Foods because the mom was a Trump supporter. So, on the one hand, we have these very serious breakup, emotions here, and the other, hey, your mom sucks. So, we have these, multiple angles there, I guess, in the song.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was a point in my life where I think singing a song about how much you hated your partner's mom was also something that was very relatable. And luckily, in my more recent relationships, I don't relate to that whatsoever. But there was a time when this song came out where I associated that line with somebody, and that's part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll keep the Phoebe Bridgers train a-rolling here with my second to last pick. And this is their supergroup, Boy Genius. It's her, Julian Baker, and Lucy Dacus. This song, it won 2 Grammys for Best Rock Song and Best Rock Performance. This is off of their only album, The Record. This is Not Strong Enough.
Breathing in and out. Drag racing through the canyon. Singing boys don't cry. Do you see us getting scraped up off the pavement? I don't know why I am the way I am. Not strong enough to be your man. I am just lowering your expectations. Half a mind that keeps the other second guessing. Close my eyes and count.
How could a song about self-hatred sound so sweet? Like, just, they have amazing voices. The part towards the end where they go, always an angel, never a god, and the harmonies and all that, like, that is pure Andrew Loves This vibes right there. You got me hooked right there. But, I think of all the songs on my list, this is the one that I relate to the most. Not that I hate myself, but I am full of anxiety and worry and self-doubt. I can't stop staring at the ceiling fan and spinning out about things that haven't happened. That's me. That's what I do. I'm always fretting about things that haven't happened, but I'm afraid that they could. And 95% of the time, they don't actually happen. Everything is fine. Everything works out fine. But these thoughts keep coming. That's just the way that I am. So, I find this song to be very relatable, Case.
I do as well. I find the Julian Baker verse, drag racing through the canyon, singing Boys Don't Cry. I find that entire stretch of the song to be absolutely magnificent. I think she is such a wonderful artist. She not only has Boy Genius, she has her great solo stuff, and then there's a hardcore band called Touche Amore who, over the course of their last 3 albums, Julian Baker has contributed backing vocals to at least one of the songs on those albums, and that is probably oddly what I associate her most with, because I love Touche Amore so much, and they're one of my favorite bands of all time, and I like that they seem to always get Julian Baker to pop in for a song or two, and I think that's great. But no, I mean, for people my age, I mean, the summer of 2023 was a summer that was defined by Boy Genius, at least if you're weird like I am. I guess the alternative world, it was a summer that was defined by Boy Genius and all 3 of these incredibly talented people in this band, and this is the best song on what is a really phenomenal record. And I agree with your sentiment as well. I spend a lot of time worrying about things that don't end up happening.
Mm-hmm. And the video of the song, it's not what you would expect. It's not this mopey, dreary video. It's the 3 of them on a road trip, going to a pier, going to a theme park, going on rides, playing games. Just hanging out and having fun. So it's like a visual reminder to just chill out. Everything's going to be okay. I guess that's the way I see it. So
I think that's well said. I never really thought about it like that, but you're right.
Yeah, I'm pretty smart. I don't know about you, but but all right. Case, what is your last pick of the episode?
Yes, to put a bow on things, I want to talk about the band The Hotelier and their song "Your Deep Rest."
You're branching off at an end for all the weight that made you bend. And when you join the shed, your leaves you pine for warmth, as they said. Your lack of love for yourself is tapping all of us here out. Trace your roots back to the ground, work out the knot hole for yourself. I called in sick to be over.
So the Hotelier belonged to a class of bands that I think now could be categorized as sort of this emo revival scene that happened in the 2010s, where there was Modern Baseball, and there was Tiger's Jaw, and there was Foxing, and there was the Front Bottoms, and there was, Captain Worst Sinking, and the Menzingers, if you want to include them in there. And the Hotelier were very much a part of that group, but they were always a little left of center. They weren't on Run for Cover records. They weren't on Side One Dummy records. They weren't on Triple Crown. They were always, they existed in that space, but they weren't the main characters ever. And I think as time has gone on, the album that this song is on, Home Like No Place There Is, has become maybe the crown jewel of that entire era of music. I think people now look at this as maybe the apex of that entire sound. I mean, sentimental picks might be, Modern Baseball, You're Gonna Miss It All, or one of the Tiger's Jaw records. But in terms of critical acclaim, I think this is the surviving record out of that group. And I was a little bit late on them. It wasn't really until they stopped being an active band that I really dove into this record, and then the one that follows it, Goodness. And both of them have had really profound impacts on my life. I think, we began this playlist with All My Happiness Is Gone, which is, a very forthright song, and, a man going through things in real time and trying to wrestle with these demons. And Your Deep Rest is the aftermath of sometimes people losing their battles. And I think it's a really important song to listen to. I think it's a really heavy song to listen to. I think this, if you don't know this band and you only know this song, there's 8 other songs on this album that are just as emotionally intense, if not more. There's no real reprieve in the album, but it's one that I do feel like everybody should sit down and spend some time with, because I think it's one of the better records of the 21st century, with this being the song that most people would know off of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you started with a doozy and you're ending with another doozy here, because, when you have a song about a guy feeling guilty for not realizing that his friend is going to kill himself, and there's lines like, I called in sick from your funeral, the sight of your family made me feel responsible, and I found the notes you left behind, little hints and helpless cries, desperate wishing to be over. I mean, Morrissey, eat your heart out. I mean, that's just a double-stuffed Oreo of sadness right there. But yeah, it's very, very heavy. And I do consider myself pretty lucky to not know what this is like. Like, I don't think I know anyone who has killed themselves. I know several people who have died for other reasons, sickness, accident, or whatever, but not for suicide. So yeah, not a song I want to put on every single day and listen to it over and over again. Like, this is kind of a once in a blue moon kind of song, I think, Case.
I do not have that issue with it. I listen to this album a lot. I had the pleasure of seeing them on the 10-year anniversary of this album. They came back and played this in full a few years ago, and I really enjoyed that show. I thought it was really special to see them in that context play this album all the way through. And then I had the pleasure of interviewing their singer, Christian Holden, who I found to be a really fascinating and really, really interesting person to be around. And so, I don't always love the interviews that I do with bands in the same way that maybe I'm proud of the Tony Khan interviews that I do. But I do really like that interview with the Hotelier, and I find this band to be a really important one, even if they've gone at times out of their way to avoid the spotlight and maybe garner new fans. I do think it's important that people know this band and listen to them.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, my last pick. Earlier, I played the song Excitable Boy, which is about a fictional killer. My last pick is a song about an actual killer. This is Jane's Addiction off of their debut album Nothing's Shocking. And this song is called Ted, Just Admit It. So yes, a song about good old Ted Bundy, one of our most prolific serial killers, killed at least 20 people, probably a lot more that are unconfirmed, and he never accepted responsibility for his crimes. There's even a clip in the song of Bundy saying, "I didn't do these things," which is why it's called Ted Just Admit It. And he eventually confessed to a bunch of murders the day before he was executed, which is a few months after this album came out. But there was always someone or something else to blame for why he did what he did. Always a scapegoat. And two of those scapegoats were violence in the media and violent pornography. And becoming addicted to that and needing to escalate that to get your fix. And that's the basis of the song. The cameras got them images, cameras got them all, nothing's shocking. Showed me everybody naked and disfigured, nothing's shocking. And the refrain that keeps getting said over and over again, sex is violent. So it's a very striking song that just oozes creepiness and menace, and it gets under your skin, which is, very appropriate for a Ted Bundy song, I think, Case.
Andrew, I thought we were friends. I can't believe you made me listen to like a 7-minute Jane's Addiction song. That is 7 minutes, far too much of Jane's Addiction, a band
that is
I
payback.
Never...
That is payback for Morrissey, for all this hardcore stuff.
I have never enjoyed a second of this band, and while I do appreciate the sentiment and I see why it's on your list, it is a band that I can continue to say that I have never enjoyed a second of.
Well, look, we all have to eat our vegetables, all right? We all have to stomach things we don't like. But I do like Jane's Addiction, so I guess I'll stay on my side of the fence here, I suppose. And here's something else, though, the real wild thing that I wanted to bring up about this. As I was listening to the song again the other day and typing up a few notes, I looked up confirmed Ted Bundy killings to, make sure I get everything straight, and literally just a few days before, April 1st, they closed a cold case in Utah of this 17-year-old girl who was found dead more than 50 years ago because they found DNA evidence linked to Bundy on her body. And she was one of the people that he confessed to killing, but he didn't explain what he did or give details about it. So the case was just open this whole time until they could prove it was him, and they finally did it. So yeah, just the craziest timing going on here. I did not plan that at all, but yeah, pretty wild timing on that part, I guess. Case. So
I do enjoy that. That's a good anecdote. I like that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, if we're going to move on from Jane's already, that was the episode. Those were our picks. Like I said earlier, a rather heavy topic, but still we had, I think, a really open and honest and important conversation about, life and feelings and music and all that good stuff. So yeah, heaviness, but still probably a better time than watching some of these upcoming Mania Weekend shows, including WrestleMania itself. So, Case, thank you so much for being here. This was really great, man.
Andrew, I appreciate it. I'm really glad we finally got a chance to do this. Thank you for letting me hear myself talk for almost 2 hours. It was really enjoyable to make this playlist and talk about some of these bands that I really, really enjoy.
Any plugs you want to give? Go right ahead.
Over the Voice Gate on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network, we cover Dragon Gate better than anybody else in the English-speaking world. New episodes typically every Wednesday morning on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed, and then on that same feed, we have our bonus show, which is Those Days, a Michinoku Pro retrospective series, in which we are covering Michinoku Pro from the very beginning in 1993 through roughly April of 2000 is sort of the goal of when to stop. We just hit 1996. Our most recent upload is the beginning of 1996, and this is a podcast that if you did not listen to our Dragon Gate USA series, or if you have not heard our Rewind and Rewatch series that we've done with some classic Dragon Gate stuff, this is not just Mike and I talking about old wrestling matches that maybe you've never seen. This is a full dive into how Michinoku Pro came to be, the history of independent Japanese wrestling, what else was going on in the wrestling world at the time, specifically 90s Japanese wrestling. We dive very deep into a lot of those topics. And 90s Lucha, we dive very deep into what I feel like has become somewhat of an unexplored topic, and I'm learning a lot about 90s Lucha as we go along in this and how it relates to Michinoku Pro. I'm very proud of that series. I really like the amount of people that I know don't follow modern day Dragon Gate that really enjoy those days. I think we've hit a new audience with that show that I'm really excited about. And so we're gonna keep firing away at those. Like I said, we just hit 1996, so we're into the golden year of Michinoku Pro in that series right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, for whatever it's worth, from me, I just want to give you all the praise in the world as a podcaster and an interviewer. Your interviews with Tony Khan and all the various wrestlers that come through Chicago whenever they do, it's great stuff, man. Really great stuff. And,
hopefully some more soon. We haven't done any this year, but that's because AEW hasn't been in Chicago. But when they come back, I would imagine that we'll have a fresh slate of interviews for people to enjoy once again. Those those make me look really good for my job. So I always appreciate the interaction, specifically from the Voices of Wrestling crew, but from everybody. That's a nice feather to have in my cap. Those make me look really good. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Tremendous work, man. And yeah, Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, all the great shows on there, voicesofwrestling.com, previews, reviews, articles, things like that. Bluesky at Music of the Mat and at Just Andrew on Bluesky. If you want to leave a comment about this episode, share your picks, voicesofwrestling.com/Discord. It's also where I post the Spotify playlist for each episode. And of course, make sure you subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, or your podcast player of choice, and leave a nice rating and review. Alright, so the playout song for today. We had a lot of indie bands on this show, a lot of punk bands, but no real big, mainstream heavy metal bands. And we should correct that with the boys from Megadeth. They have a song about a guy with schizophrenia. This is off of Countdown to Extinction. It's Sweating Bullets. Thanks again, Case.
Thank you.
Hello, me. Meet the real me. In my misfits way of life, a dark black past is my most valued possession. Hindsight is always 20/20, but looking back, it's still a bit fuzzy. Speak of mutually assured destruction. Nice story. Calculator's digest. Feeling paranoid to enemy of fostering. Anxiety's attacking me. My hair is getting thin. I'm in trouble for things I haven't got to yet. I'm jumping at the bit, and my palms are getting wet. Hello, me, it's me again. You can subdue but never tame me. It gives me a migraine headache.
Music of the Mat is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. The songs used throughout this show are property of their respective copyright holders.
Wrestling Omakase brings you a full-course meal of all of Japanese wrestling, men's and women's. Join me, a Japanese wrestling fan for over 20 years, along with a rotating cast of equally knowledgeable co-hosts, as we cover everything from New Japan and Stardom to Noah, All Japan, DDT, Tokyo Joshi, Mari Gold, Sendai Girls, Dragon Gate, GLEAT, Ice Ribbon, and even more stuff. If you're a fan of Japanese wrestling and you want coverage of the entire scene in one podcast, check us out right here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network each and every week. Get us wherever you get podcasts today.